What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I hope you're ready to see one of the coolest Star Wars World War II mashup vehicles ever, because I'm building it today. And if you thought last week's lights looked good, wait till you see what I have planned this week. I also need to figure out if my plan for running the wires underneath the floor of the bridge is actually going to work, and that's about as action-packed a week as we've had so far from Magito, so don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. This is the coolest custom walker I've ever seen, and if that wasn't enough, it's got World War II vibes to it. It's called the ATAS, and it's designed by a guy named Parsival. That's probably not his real name, but that's just what we're going with. And shout out to someone on Instagram for sending this to me. I tried to find who that was, but got lost in the sea of DMs. Anyways, thanks for sending it my way. Because it's a custom model, I sourced all the pieces myself. I got everything from Bricklink, and normally I try to use as many pieces from my collection as I can, but I wanted to give you guys as accurate a price estimate as I could, so I basically bought all the parts. This model uses 652 pieces, and the total came out to about $70 US, but I accidentally overpaid for some of the parts because I wasn't paying attention. Plus, it has some expensive printed and sticker pieces, so if you cut out all that, I bet you could get the price down to $65, maybe $60. And I would pay that for one of these over Ahsoka's ship any day. The instructions can be purchased on Rebrickable for I think around $5. If you want to check out the model or the instructions, I'll post a link to that in the comments. The instructions were very easy to follow. I think it's because I'm in the process of designing a rather large vehicle myself, but I have so much respect and awe for people who can not only design a good-looking vehicle, but build it in a way that people can follow along and build it themselves with instructions. If I tried to do that with my builds, there would be riots in the streets and people would be demanding I never build again with how messy my stuff gets. For me, one of the biggest downsides to building a custom mock is sifting through the mess of parts. Trying to find the pieces I need. Nothing makes me appreciate the numbered bags of a Lego set like sitting down in front of a custom model. I do my best to sort the parts before I begin, but I mostly do part groups and color, but even with that, the builds take so much longer. I know I could buy a little sorting tray to help, but that'll only do so much. So far, the build has been very easy. No crazy techniques or weird steps in the instructions, but it's a fun, non-repetitive build. Let me know in the comments if this is something you would build and display. One of the first things I appreciated about this build, aside from how cool it looks, was the care and detail Parsival put into it. I'm building an armored panel that goes on the front to protect the body, and it has headlights built into it. Also, there's a foldable ladder in the back. So props to him for that. The turret has a lot going on. The seats are all brick built, and he used every little bit of space in here. The turret is what really gives it the World War II vibe. It's reminiscent of a heavy artillery gun with the massive barrel poking out between the slanted front panels, and it has a little locker for holding rounds that are loaded into the gun. I know Star Wars is full of laser guns and lightsabers, but we do see this shell or ordnance-based type of gun as well. The CIS J1 proton cannon fires externally loaded rounds both in Revenge of the Sith and in the Clone Wars, so this walker isn't out of the realm of possibility. At last, it's done in time to connect the turret to the body, and this thing is ready to send battle droids and democracy haters some long-distance payloads. Before I break down the many cool features of the ATAS, I need to start building the tunnel entrance. It's about time. I did a ton of rock work on Saturday's Building Magito livestream, and now I have the rock work up to the right height, and side note, I got that mountain to flow at the angle of the bridge basically perfectly, so let's go. Now that that's all in, there shouldn't be anything standing in my way to get the tunnel built. Well, other than the fact that I don't know what it's going to look like or how I'm going to build it, but who needs to know that anyways? I can at least put the foundation for it in, which will be those goated 16x16 plates and brick. Here's maybe one of the most embarrassing building clips I've ever put on YouTube. Those are some of the most crooked support pillars I've ever seen. Someone needs to take my Lego away. Like, how did I build anything that can support itself? I'm gonna build two small prototypes of the entrance because I have two options I want to try. One is what I normally do when building an opening of some kind, and the other is much more complicated but produces a more realistic look. So pay attention to this next little bit so you can let me know what you think. I know you're probably just chomping at the bit, excited to get a good look at that ATAS and its awesome features, but real quick, I want to talk about these tunnel options I've been building because I want to get your guys' feedback. So the two options I have are, first, the classic coconut look. This is something you guys have seen me do a lot, where I build some kind of doorway or opening and then place a row of black brick directly behind it. This allows me to create the illusion that, you know, something's open, it goes back off somewhere in some kind of tunnel or room, but I don't actually have to build any of that, and I can put, you know, filler brick and other supports behind it. Pros are very easy to build. I have a lot of the parts for it. Sometimes I'll build the black wall directly behind the opening, but in this case, I actually want to set the black part maybe back to like right here. That way I'll have some actual room in the tunnel to stick lights on the walls and to have troops and vehicles coming in and out. But the con is, well, it's very simple. There isn't as much detail, as much complexity, and sometimes, you know, the black can look a little bit strange, especially if you have like a ton of lights everywhere and then suddenly this pitch black tunnel entrance. The second option is a lot more complicated, kind of artistic, I guess, the Rich Boy J option I call it sometimes. And this has, instead of a black wall, a sloped wall of brick that's supposed to represent the tunnel slowly curving and going off in a different direction. That way when you look inside, you can see, it looks like there's an actual tunnel in there, you know, there isn't just a black wall. It looks like it actually goes somewhere. And this is obviously cool because then you don't have that black wall. There's much more to look at. It's more realistic, more of a story is being told, I guess. The downside is the fact that, you know, from a certain angle, you can see that there's nothing there. So you really have to be specific with where you put your camera shots and where you let people look, or else, you know, it'll just kind of look like it just goes off into nothing as well. Another downside is complexity. It requires a ton more parts. I mean, I'd have to build an entire angled wall going off this direction and then build another wall coming in until, you know, it kind of cuts off where this wall is going a little bit. And then scaled up to this size, that would be a pretty big wall. It would basically have to run all the way to the edge of the mock, with this one coming in right here and kind of going like that, which honestly could work because I decided I want to include a room right here of like a kind of droid control room with droids just doing random things. I don't know, computers, maybe some prisoners, I don't know, just some, you know, just like a fun Easter egg to sit into the side of the wall. A, to give me something else to build, and B, it'll add some more detail and just, you know, add more to the build. So that could work with that tunnel connecting to that room. However, the issue is just how many parts I would need. That would be so many slopes to come all the way back here. And then this option would also weaken the top, because you got to remember, an entire city is going to be sitting above this rockwork. So I'm gonna have tons of massive pillars coming down to help hold that up. And if I have all of this open, that's gonna be less support for the city above it. Whereas with this black brick version, you know, I could have the black brick be all the way back here. So there's still room to go in and out of the tunnel. I can still light it up, but then I don't have all of this space being used for the build, so I can have, you know, big pillars and stuff holding up the city above it. So I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments which of these options you think would work better or you like more. This ATAS is awesome. Hands down the coolest custom Star Wars walker I've ever come across. The build was relatively easy, although there were some techniques used that I wouldn't recommend for a beginner builder. It's more reminiscent of a UCS set building wise, kind of like the UCS AT-AT. I really appreciated the level of care and detail Parsifal put into this build, from the brick built pistons and the legs to the giant plate of armor in the front and the shields protecting the joints on the knees. None of these things really needed to be there, but aesthetically they add so much to the build and make it feel more real. The turret can rotate 360 degrees and the barrel has a super wide range of motion, even able to shoot right down in front of it. And if you need more height, you can always raise the front legs to elevate the barrel even more. The turret is packed full of detail as well, with anti-personnel cannons mounted on either side, targeting and range finding systems on the front panel. This guy really thought of it all. To get in and out of the vehicle, there's a ladder that unfolds and can reach the deck of the turret. It does sit pretty high off the ground, so I added an extra step so the clones don't fall off and hurt themselves. There's room for 3 crew members, a driver, gunner, and loader. The loader has the coolest station. There's a little locker holding the shells for the gun, and it even has a breech you can open to place the rounds inside the cannon. The gunner and driver are more cramped. I had to bend back the gunner's arm really far to get him to sit down, and the driver's computer is right under his chin, but maybe I just need to rewatch the review to see how to place them properly. Overall, I'd give this model an 8 out of 10. It's an incredible build from design to play features. The only downsides are one of the techniques in the barrel might damage 1 or 2 of the pieces. The gunner doesn't really fit in his seat, and the ladder was too short, but I mean, those aren't really a big deal at all. So I would definitely recommend building one of these yourself if you're interested. Also, for a high-end mock, it's pretty sturdy. It's gonna look so cool on the main bridge. With all this momentum building up over the week, I decided it was time to finally bury all those wires on the bridge. I have an idea that should work in theory, just bury the wires under the plate and tile, but I realized once I do that and connect those wires to the battery pack, I can't remove the different sections of the bridge without ripping up the tile and wires. So I need to finish the underside of this bridge and run another extension extension wire and expansion board out for any future lights, because once this bridge goes into place, it's not coming back up and I can't plug anything else in. My plan is pretty simple here. Pull up the tile of the bridge and run the wires to the light fixtures, then place the tile back down. That is one really cool feature of Light My Brick stuff. You can build over the wires without damaging them. The only problem is the tile doesn't sit completely level because, you know, there's wire underneath. So if you have a lot of wires, it can make your plate or tile look uneven and bumpy, like there's a bunch of tree roots underneath. But I'm hoping that's not too noticeable. I got lucky with this expansion board because it sits right where the deepest part of the snowbank is, so I'm just going to bury it in that. The last thing I need to figure out is how to cover the exposed bit of wire that runs up from the floor to the light, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. For the tunnel entrance, I wanted something very squat and bunker looking, like the opening of a military base or hangar built into a mountain. Since you know this was built by rich bad guys, and they like their layers and hideouts to last. I'm going to start with a pillar on one side and just build. I had no specific look or technique I wanted, so I'm just seeing what looks good. The whole idea for the tunnel entrance came to me after I planned the main part of the mock. This isn't part of the actual battle, so there isn't any reference material or pre-existing ideas to go off of, but sometimes that's just how I like it. It allows me to do whatever I want to do. I'm adding plate and tile to the front of the pillar to break up the flatness and add some texture and detail. Then I'm going to try and make a rounded top with slopes. I noticed openings like this tend to be both round on the outside and inside, so I'm going to stick some wedge plates and inverted slopes to the tunnel roof to make it look more round on the inside. And there you have it, generic bunker or tunnel entrance. Now I still haven't decided how to end this tunnel, but either way I won't be stopping it right at the mouth, so I'm going to build some interior walls with lights and other stuff. I'm doing this just for fun. It'll be like one more room to build, one more scene to set up, which will help make the mock look cooler and feel more lived in and real. It's not always about adding one big epic thing that makes a mock cool, but lots of smaller things coming together to create an awesome scene and story. Plus I want the clones to look like they're actually fighting to capture something important instead of just a black hole in the rock. For some reason I just really wanted to put green lights in the tunnel. It just felt right. It just felt like that was the color that needed to happen, so now it's time to see if that paid off or not. Once again, the LEGO lights have come in clutch and taken this mock to another level. I love the green tint of the lights. It gives the exact look and vibe I was hoping for. There's a scene from a movie or something that was in a military base, tunnel, or hall. I remember it was lit up with green lights, and I have no idea what the scene was, what it was in, or even if I'm just making all that up. But there was some kind of subconscious vision behind this idea in my head that makes me think military and bunkers when I look at this. The opening looks good as well, though like I said, I had no specific look or design I was going for, so the expectations weren't super high, and as long as I like it, mission accomplished. Now that the tunnel is in, I can go crazy on that rock work. To solve the problem of the exposed wires on the wall, I just placed some crates down in front of the light, and then added more white parts to the wire by the snowbank, covering it up, and lastly, a dead battle droid hides the wires great. Using the terrain and accessories in your build can be a great way to hide wires without actually having to bury them. It's so nice to have the wires finally buried in the bridge, and it all worked out great, so now I can reuse these techniques on the big bridge. That's the nice thing about building two bridges and doing the small one first. I can experiment with all my ideas on this one and get all the kinks worked out. I was worried those wires under the tile would make it look bumpy and uneven, but as you can see, nothing. The road looks as smooth as can be. Man, this was a dynamite episode. With all the wiring and planning I've been doing over the last few weeks, some of the episodes felt like there wasn't much building or visible progress being made, but man, I got so much done this week. Not only that, I'm getting more excited to work on the mock. It's crazy how much of a difference a few simple lights will make, not only with the mock, but myself and my motivation. Next week, I think it might be time to start the big bridge. That's right. No more games, it's time for the main attraction. The UTAT is also about halfway done, so I'll give you an update on how that's looking as well. But that wraps up this week's update. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about everything down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.